Warnock has to know that he's only going to be in the Senate for 2 years. Like, this statement here said way too much. He definitely said a couple of things that he shouldn't have. Nobody's going to read it because the media is just going to go ahead and, if I can use one of their terms, whitewash this one from existence. And yeah, it's not too dissimilar from Ossoff's, but at least Ossoff had the balls to say, hey, MLB, you probably shouldn't be doing this. But this one tipped the Democrats' hands a little bit more than anybody else has so far. Businesses and organizations have great power in their voices and ability to push for change, and I respect the decision of the players to speak out against this unjust law. He used to be a preacher. It is not the people of Georgia or the workers of Georgia who crafted this law. It is the politicians seeking to retain power at the expense of Georgian voices. Today's decision by the MLB is an unfortunate consequence of those politicians' actions. Two things out of that last part of the statement there. It is the politicians seeking to retain power at the expense of Georgians' voices. Okay, first of all, can you tell me, Mr. Warnock, where you were elected to the Senate? And number two, did your boss carry the state of Georgia in the previous election cycle? Okay, so politicians seeking to retain power at the expense of Georgians. If I may throw your words back into your own face, that would mean that these laws were crafted in order to make sure that you were going to retain power. But I wouldn't expect a big brain take like that to be thought so well through. And then the last line there, today's decision by the NFL, they went woke a long time ago, that's not the point of this. The MLB is an unfortunate consequence of these politicians' actions, just showing that the Democrats and whoever wants to go ahead and bellyache about these laws need not do anything about it. They will just let their corporate henchmen, corporate equals, like, I don't even know where to put big corporations because they're all on the side of the Democrats. I just don't know because they're donating to them if they're the ones that are in charge, if they're the ones pulling the strings, or if they're the ones just being the foot soldiers for the Democratic Party, because they're doing all their dirty work. Meanwhile, the ones in power, the Democrats, can run around saying, oh, don't worry, you guys have freedom of speech, but you don't have freedom of consequence, which is one of the dumbest fucking things in the world. Which has always just been code for, the government doesn't need to do that, we'll just let our henchmen take care of it. And yeah, I haven't really heard any sort of proper interpretation, at least by the mainstream media. A lot of good online voices have assessed the voter integrity law, and it's like, it's pretty banal. It doesn't really go far enough. It's a good step, but outside of that, it's not as comprehensive as it should be. A couple of senators are saber-rattling right now, like Mike Lee and Ted Cruz are saying, oh, we're going to get rid of the MLB's antitrust protections. Whatever, it's not going to get past the Senate anyways. There's too many rhinos that don't want to rattle the corporate cages, and the Democrats will just vote like a block anyways. Once again, power to them, because they like to stand up for one another and their causes, and fuck, you don't want to mess with their bottom line. That's why, yeah, boycotting the MLB, boycotting these corporations that are coming out and taking these lukewarm 90 IQ takes that are just regurgitated from mainstream media. Oh, we can't get free water and snacks in line. For one, it's only within 150 feet of the polling office, and it can't be done by anybody working specifically for a campaign, but poll workers can. And two, why are you coming in to vote just to get fucking treats? When was that ever a thing? I don't quite fucking understand that. Why do you think if you're exercising one of your fundamental rights that you need to be rewarded for it? Like, what are you all, dogs? I don't get it. But nobody's really pointed out a specific package, or a specific passage in the nearly 100-page bill that is racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever ist or obe you want to put on it. It's just, once again, over and over again, the same stuff. Oh, this is just Jim Crow in a different set of clothes. This is voter suppression. It's racist. It's amazing when they're in power and complaining about stuff, how lazy leftists can get with their smears. But at least somebody's galvanizing the other side right now. And of course it was Trump. He put out one of his little email blasts. It was quite funny. I know it was effective right away against Goodyear the last time that he called for. Was it even calling for a boycott? I don't even know. And there's a difference between cancel culture and a boycott, okay? Cancel culture is specifically going after somebody to get them deplatformed, to get them out of the public sphere. A boycott, for those of you in the know, is just not consuming. There's a difference. It's going and actively trying to tear something down and then just walking away. And I'll be interested to see the ratings and the fallout of this. I hope wherever MLB puts the All-Star Game, ticket sales are just dog shit. So far, I haven't seen anything on it, but when it comes up and when we get the ratings for Sunday Night Baseball or for some of the high-profile games, I'll be sure to report it. But let's get to the little blast here before we go over the main event. In an effort to boycott Major League Baseball, he has gained some traction on social media. Really how? He's banned off of every social media platform. President Donald Trump urged people to punish MLB for its decision to move the All-Star Game out of Georgia. The move is in response to the state's new election law, which critics, including President Joe Biden, which also Washington Post had to fact-check Biden and gave him 4 Pinocchios. I think that's their highest rating, when he claimed that people can't even get water online. It's like, no, that's actually not the case. But guess what didn't get headlines on that? The fact check. Even though that we all know mainstream media and big tech love their fact checkers, have called it a voter suppression measure and compared to racist Jim Crow era laws, which we will shortly. Baseball is already losing tremendous numbers of fans. Yeah, the ratings last year were fairly atrocious, and now they leave Atlanta with their All-Star Game because they are afraid of the radical left Democrats who do not want voter ID, which is desperately needed to have anything to do with our elections, Trump said in a statement from his Save America PAC, yeah, the little newsletter that went out. Boycott baseball and all of the woke companies that are interfering with free and fair elections. Are you listening, Coke, Delta, and all? Okay, I know that this picture from Newsweek is supposed to be a slam, but I think that it's actually kind of funny. And that's one thing. That's why the left couldn't effectively lampoon Trump over the past 5 years. Not because they're just horrifically unfunny. It's just they don't understand that Trump is a walking lampoon in and of himself. But that's another story for another time. Anyways, always comparing it to Jim Crow era laws, okay? I always thought that this was asinine. I had a little understanding of what Jim Crow laws were. I knew the Democrats were big perpetrators of them, but I couldn't quite pinpoint exactly what they were, what they called for. And I feel like a lot of people might be in the same situation. They might hear big bad Jim Crow and just run, duck, and cover, or immediately get defensive, like the right tends to do every fucking time that an attack happens, which is why we're in the situations that we are right now. But I thought, let's compare these relatively benign election integrity laws that Georgia, Texas, Wyoming, a bunch of other states are trying to push through right now. Some have been signed into law, some are waiting in the Senate. And let's see if they fit the description of Jim Crow in a different dress. We got a brief synopsis, okay? Jim Crow laws were a collective of state and local statutes that legalized racial segregation. Okay. Fails the first test. Named after a black minstrel show character. Oh, okay. The laws, which existed for about 100 years, from the post-Civil War era until about 68, were meant to marginalize African Americans by denying them the right to vote, hold jobs, get an education, or other opportunities. Okay, it does nothing in regards to jobs, does nothing in regards to education, or other opportunities. The only thing that these laws address is voting, and it has nothing to do with race anywhere in the laws. Okay? We'll go further as it goes along. Those who attempted to defy Jim Crow laws often faced arrest, fines, jail sentences, violence, and death. And looking at the penalties, and we did that when I did my recap of it, the only penalty is $100 per infraction. No jail sentence, no violence, no death. But then again, if you are so terribly parched of water and drink, you might be able to pass out if you're within 150 yards of the voting station. So the black codes, the roots of Jim Crow laws, Christ on ice, began as early as 1865, immediately following the ratification of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery in every state. Black codes were strict local and state laws that detailed when, where, and how formerly enslaved people could work, and how much compensation. Oh, and for how much compensation. The codes appeared throughout the South as a legal way to put black citizens into indentured servitude, to take voting rights away, to control where they lived and how they traveled, and to seize children for labor purposes. The legal system was stacked against black citizens, with former Confederate soldiers working as police and judges, making it difficult for African Americans to win court cases and ensuring they were subject to black codes. Okay, let's parse that paragraph out a little bit. The legal system was stacked against, let's replace black with Republican citizens? Go with me on this one. With former Confederate soldiers working as police and judges. Okay, in big inner cities, who are normally the police and judges? Look at all the high-profile cases, okay? They get assigned to whom? We've seen a whole ton of just election cases. Parler's big tech case against Amazon Web Services, they went to democratically appointed judges. And in the other cases where they went to Trump judges, they were all fairly exclusively, I can't think of a single instance, but every judge was a part of the Federalist Neocon Society. I'm just saying, if we're going to be making ideological comparisons, I think it's pretty fair there. And then the police departments. Okay, every individual beat cop out there, who cares what their ideological purpose is? But you take a look at the chief of police. You take a look at the commander of the police department. Let's look in Portland. Who is the police commissioner? Well, that would be the mayor. That would be Ted Wheeler, or every other chief of police during the riotous times in the summers of 2020. They all came out and they all condemned right-wing violence. It was all leftist talking points. So that kind of falls apart if we're going to be making comparisons between Jim Crow laws and a simple voter integrity law. These codes worked in conjunction with labor camps for the incarcerated, where prisoners were treated as enslaved people. We're skipping countries, but did you know that incoming citizens of Canada have to spend a certain amount of time in government-prescribed hotels? They can't leave, they can't import anything, and they're forced to pay for the hotels out of their own pocket. I don't know. Or even just sticking within the boundaries of the United States. How about the COVID camps that Andrew Cuomo was proposing before all the Me Too stuff hit? You guys remember those? Yeah, exactly. Black offenders typically received longer sentences than their white equals, and because of the grueling work, often did not live out their entire sentence. Okay, but there's no jail time in these voter integrity laws, so that's moot. The KKK, the old cool kids club. During the Reconstruction era, local governments, as well as the National Democratic Party and President Andrew Johnson, thwarted efforts to help black Americans move forward. Violence was on the rise, making danger a regular aspect of African American life. Black schools were vandalized and destroyed. What's being vandalized and destroyed right now? Just want you to picture 100 nights of riots right now. Just go ahead. And bands of violent white people attacked, tortured, and lynched black citizens in the night. The groups of random roaming individuals are still mostly white. They just aren't terribly specific if they're going after black, white, Hispanic people. Families were attacked and forced off their land all across the South. And in this instance, all across Portland. They're going into suburbs. How about that? The most ruthless organization of the Jim Crow era, which was perpetuated by the Democratic Party, was the Klan. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, was born in 1865, was born in 2013 in Pulaski, Tennessee, in the coastal elite cities, as a private club of Confederate veterans of university-educated white people and Marxist indoctrinated black women, 4 of them if I recall. Remember, we are trained Marxists. The KKK grew into a secret society terrorizing black communities and sweeping through white Southern culture, with members at the highest levels of government and the lowest echelons of criminally black alleys. Antifa's just a myth. Jim Crow laws explained. Here's the big one. At the start of the 1880s, big cities in the South were not wholly beholden to Jim Crow laws, and black Americans found more freedom in them. This led to substantial black populations moving to cities, and, as the decade progressed, white city dwellers demanded more laws to limit opportunities for African Americans. Well, the exact opposite is happening right now. People are moving out of cities. Jim Crow laws soon spread around the country with even more force than previously. Public parks were forbidden for African Americans to enter, and theaters and restaurants were segregated. And who's enforcing those right now? It's not in the voter integrity laws. Oh, fuck no. But which gang of roving idiots are walking around with their drums, banging them along, terrorizing people that are forced to be eating out on the street. I'm just saying, if they don't raise their fist or something. Segregated waiting rooms in bus and train stations were required, as well as water fountains, restrooms, building entrances, elevators, cemeteries, and even amusement park cashier windows. Well, if you guys remember at the beginning of the university season, there was a story that went around that there was different interactive internet cafes, little events that went on at the University of Michigan's Dearborn campus, where they had BIPOC only and non-minority separate gatherings to discuss race relations. There is more to this article, but just for the sake of time, I won't bother making continuous comparisons. I think you guys get the drift. More importantly, yeah, the Georgia voter integrity law bears no comparison to Jim Crow. In fact, the way that the Democrats so swiftly invoke this, it's almost like they have a very intimate knowledge of what Jim Crow laws are, what is happening with their current day foot soldiers, and how they are actually enforcing them without having to even use their pen to sign anything into legislation. Jim Crow laws were on the books. Antifa, Black Lives Matter, they are running around right now in large cities across the country. They're not even sticking to the South. They're going everywhere they possibly can. And they are enforcing these segregationist policies at their deepest level. And guess what Democrats get to do? Oh, that doesn't exist. Oh, that's not happening. Oh, my private business can do whatever they want. The long and short of it is, yeah, every time that they invoke Jim Crow, whenever somebody unironically says this kind of stuff, you can feel free to dismiss them without a second thought, because clearly they haven't gone through even a couple of the 100 pages of the Georgia law, and they don't even remotely know about the 100 years of Jim Crow, and more than likely, they weren't either alive or old enough to have experienced any of this stuff. Oh, but my legacy, my systemic racism. Yeah, go bitch and whine to your other gender studies grad friends. With that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.